I didn't want to make a video about this whole Dylan Roof situation until I had all the information in front of me. And now that I have all the information in front of me, I can pretty much make my commentary regarding it. Mr. Superboy 223 was pretty much on point when he said that, you know, the death of Trayvon Martin would embolden more killers like this. And he said that about a week ago, and we listened to Dylan Roof's manifesto, and he's so on the money. It's not even funny. I mean, it's just he was right, absolutely, positively right, that this would embolden more killers like him. And when I look at the whole situation, the saddest whole part of it is that we looked at George Zimmerman. Most of us in America looked at George Zimmerman, and we didn't take it seriously. And now we're seeing the precedent that has been established through Dylan Roof's actions, because by giving George Zimmerman that pass, this enabled other white supremacists and racists to believe that black lives didn't matter. Now, I've always said that black lives need to matter to black people, and yes, that's part of it. But the precedent established by that Florida jury, and later on by our own black president and attorney general, pretty much have set the precedent that emboldened killers like Dylan Roof to take action. If these cowards had seen George Zimmerman taken to prison, I believe they would not even think about taking action. When you look at Dylan Roof, basically I see a dysfunctional coward, a man without the backbone or the testicles to, you know, participate in his actions face to face. And if he had to go into that church face to face with those people, I guarantee you, and spout his racist rhetoric, I guarantee you what would happen was he would pretty much not say a single word, because without his 9 millimeters of courage, this guy pretty much wouldn't be able to do anything. Dylan Roof reminds me of many of these cyberspace bad boys. I see them a lot on the message boards like your Fwoosh or your YouTube here, these internet trolls, these internet bad boys. They can write all of these long, 2-page rants on blogs and on web pages and on message boards, and these trolls will come and they will try to get you into arguments and get you into fights, but in real life they can't engage anyone face to face. Really, these guys wouldn't even know how to tie their own shoes, because we look at Dylan Roof. He's a ninth grade dropout, and he was bumming his way through life. I mean, he had been arrested on drug charges, and here he was talking about how much he hated black people, but he never wanted to take the moment to examine his own life and his own decisions and see that he is in the situation that he's in based because of his own decisions and his own actions. And because he's too much of a coward to take that look within, which many racists don't want to do, they never want to say that their life is messed up because of them. They go and they project their anger and rage at black people. Black people had nothing to do with where Dylan Roof was. He hated black people because he hated himself, really, and he was projecting his hatred of himself on the black people. He was trying to blame black people for where he was in life, and his long angry manifestos reminded me much of James Holmes, Adam Lanza, and Elliot Rodger, more white males who believe in the narrative of white male victimization. The white male victimization narrative is just as dysfunctional and as codependent as the black male narrative for victimization that your pro-blacks actually, talk about. In both cases, we have people who want to blame somebody else for their station in life. And what this boy did, not boy, he's a man, because he's a grown man, 21 years old. And what this man did was all on him. And when we look at his actions afterward, after he killed all these people, he went and tried to escape, because that's when he realized that all the ideas that he had in his head, ran into this wall we call reality. And that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. This is why he just ran away, because he realized that the fantasy in his head did not play out in the way he thought. After he thought he killed all these people, he thought, oh, all these other white people were going to join him in some sort of race war. But when he saw that that didn't happen, then he wanted to run. Because that's the way I see it from what was presented on the news. This was a coward, plain and simple. He only had the courage to act because he had his 9 millimeters of courage. If he didn't have that 9 millimeters of courage, this guy, I guarantee you, wouldn't say a single word. He pretty much would come up with some anonymous name and put it on his website and, go into these long rants and talk about black people, and that would be it. But he only acted because, again, he felt emboldened by your George Zimmerman, and he felt emboldened by the legal precedent established by our own black president and our black attorney general and that Florida jury. And that emboldened him, but then, I look at it as this guy was pretty much a coward. Everything that he did was cowardly. I mean, he said he picked South Carolina because of the ratio of blacks, but the reason why he picked that church is because he knew that those people would not fight him back. He knew if he went to that college campus like he originally planned, chances are somebody else was going to have a gun. If he walked into that church, he knew that, no one would have a gun. Those people would invite him in because most Christians, I've been a Christian for 25 years, they're very open, they're very friendly. They'll invite anyone into their sanctuary to pray with them. He sat right next to this pastor and prayed with them. And, for him to do that, that showed complete malice of forethought. And it showed how truly evil this man was. I mean, he is on the same level as Elliot Rodger and Adam Lanza and James Holmes and even those Columbine killers, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. And I used to think that these guys were mentally ill. I'm seeing now that they're not mentally ill. When I look at Dylan Roof, he wasn't mentally ill. Everything he did showed, again, malice of forethought through his actions. Um, and in his words, he pretty much reinforced his malice of forethought. And he pretty much let everybody know that he willfully and intentionally planned to kill these black people. He went there with an intent to commit murder. And this coward only wanted to commit murder because he knew that those people wouldn't fight back. He knew that your Christian, believes in turning the other cheek. He knows that your Christian believes in forgive and forget. And this is why he did what he did, because he did this with extreme malice of forethought. I mean, he intended to kill these people, and he knew that those people would not fight him back. If this coward knew that he was going to run up on some law enforcement or even some black people with concealed carry, I guarantee you he wouldn't have tried to do anything. This guy was he was what we call a web warrior. These guys, they'll get on the web, they'll be tough, big, bad, super tough, but in real life, they're pretty much cowards, they're fraidy cats, and yeah, they're good with a keyboard, but they're horrible with their fists. I mean, I look at this guy, and it pretty much showed in his actions. But what was more dangerous than your Dylan Roof were the people around your Dylan Roof. Just like in the case of your George Zimmerman, the people around your Dylan Roof pretty much were silent. And I remember something Albert Einstein said when I read it back in 2009. He said, all it takes is for evil to win, is for good people to do nothing. And in the case of George Zimmerman, and in the case of Dylan Roof, and even in the case of Eric Garner, I mean, good people did nothing, and this is why these men died. This is why men and women died. Because good people sat back. They knew what a clear and present danger these people were, and they did nothing. I mean, in the case of George Zimmerman, people knew for years that George Zimmerman was a walking time bomb. In the case of Officer Pantaleo, who still continues to collect a paycheck in the NYPD, people knew what a clear and present danger he was after 2 federal civil rights lawsuits, and they did nothing. In the case of Dylan Roof, people knew what a clear and present danger this boy was, and they did nothing. It seems like in America, whenever we have something pop off, people want to play Monday morning quarterback and say, what they should have done. When they should have just, instead of saying what they should have done, they should have taken action. And when you see a guy like this sitting there and plotting murders for months, there were things that could have been done. I mean, confiscate his guns, or put him in a 72-hour hold, or begin proceedings for mental health or something. Now, these things may seem like informalities, but they would have at least given people a chance to do something. I mean, you see a man sitting there talking about he's going to commit murder. You just don't sit there and blow it off. I mean, this guy was a hardcore white supremacist, and he's sitting there talking about committing murders and making plans. And the scariest part was one of his friends was black, and he's just sitting there, and they're just blowing it off. I mean, when somebody sits there and comes out in the open and says, "I'm going to murder people," you pretty much do it. I find it very interesting that, I was watching a video from Goth, and they said that when people thought they were going to shoot up a school and the rumor was about them shooting up a school, they took them to the side and searched them. But in the case of this white male, they pretty much gave him a pass. And it pretty much, shows how dysfunctional America is regarding its perceptions, regarding race and culture and identity. You will search the Goth thinking that they're going to shoot up a school, but this white male, who pretty much, if you looked at his face, showed the same hatred in his eyes that Adam Lanza had, James Holmes had, Elliot Rodger had, and even Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold had. They had the same intense, hateful look in their eyes, and most people give them a pass. Sometimes I think people give them a pass because they actually want to participate in these behaviors, and they live vicariously through these races, and that's why they give people, again, like your Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, your George Zimmerman, your Adam Lanza, your Elliot Rodger, your James Holt. They give these people a pass because they want to participate in these behaviors, and they secretly have a hatred for black people or hatred for society in the same way that these people have, but they live vicariously through them. This is what I believe regarding most of society. This is why people are so silent about it, and they won't speak out against these type of people. And I listen to them, and I watch their actions, and their actions truly speak volumes to me, regarding Dylan Roof. You knew this man was a danger for years, but you did nothing. I mean, even if people just walked up to him and confronted him about his behavior and said, "Look, you can't be going around plotting murders of people. I mean, that's life in prison." And just put logic in front of him, that would have had an impact on things. But people, you listen to this guy talking about, "I'm going to kill niggas," and you just sit there and you do nothing about it. Again, that's all it took for an evil person like him to win in Charleston, South Carolina. That's all it took for him to win, was for these people to do nothing. And I feel that, their silence and indifference was worse, more so, than the murders themselves. Because what happens is, it's this silence and indifference that continues to escalate these things. People were silent and indifferent regarding George Zimmerman. They were silent and indifferent regarding Daniel Pantaleo. They were silent and indifferent regarding this Dylan Roof. And it's the silence and indifference that allows this type of hatred and malice to continue day after day and year after year. And until good people start speaking out and standing up to people like this, nothing is going to get done about the evil of racism in America. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.